Hey friends, welcome to another episode of the Called Collective, where we exist to equip the next generation of ministry leaders. When you hear the word church, what comes to mind? When you hear the word church, what comes to mind? I know for me, right off the bat, there are three images of church that immediately come to my mind. And the first is probably the most typical, and it's church as a building. It could be a really old looking church with like the steeple and kind of that classic church vibe. It could be this massive stone cathedral. It could be a small church. It could be a massive church. You name it. We often can think of church as a building. That's the first image. But another image for a church is church as an event. It is something that we attend or something we go to. So whenever you say, we're going to go to church, more often than not, that means you're going to attend an event. Maybe that's a worship service on a Sunday morning. Maybe that's a youth group on a Wednesday night. That could be a small group on Friday night. That could be a potluck on Saturday morning, you name it. But church can also be an event. But most importantly, and this is the third image that I want us to get, and it's church as a group. Ecclesia, the Greek word that we originally translate to church, means assembly or a group of people. So more literally, ecclesia means a group of the called out ones, those called out for God's mission. So church is not just a place, it's not just an event, but it is also a group that you can belong to, a community of fellow Christ followers. So those are our three images of church. Church is a building, church is an event, church is a group. And you know what these three common images of church describe? It's this thing called the gathered church. The gathered church is when a group of Christ followers gather together at a certain place, at a certain time, to worship God, confess sins, and hear the preaching of God's word. And the gathered church is kind of like a team huddle right before a really big game. You know, when they huddle all the team players together, they're going over the plan, they're pumping them up, and trying to really get them encouraged before they go out and play the big game. That's what the gathered church does. This occurs on Sunday mornings, Saturday evenings, Wednesday nights, or any other event that the church might put on. So why are we talking about this? You see, when people are sensing a call to ministry or even vocational ministry, the common thought is to get a job in the gathered church. These jobs include any role that helps make the gathered church function. This includes lead pastor roles like preaching and giving direction for the church. It includes executive roles to manage teams and to execute tasks to achieve the vision. It includes youth roles to run youth ministries, children's ministry roles to manage Sunday morning kids church, worship roles to recruit music volunteers and plan services, outreach roles to manage service opportunities in the community, administrative roles that ensure all the details get done, and so much more. And again, the common theme in all of these jobs, even though they incorporate a whole bunch of different people and a whole bunch of different tasks, is that they help make the gathered church function on a weekly basis. So if a student is called to work for the gathered church, he or she may go to Bible college or ministry school or seminary specifically to get a degree in theology or Bible, or just to equip them with all the practical ministry skills to get this job in making the local church run. However, there is a fourth image of the church that we haven't talked about today, and it's the image of church as a movement. Church as a movement. You see, the church was never meant to be confined to a group of people who met in a building 1 hour a week. The church, God's chosen people, are ultimately sent on a mission to make his name known everywhere they go through everything they do. Therefore, the gathered church's job is to build up God's people so that they can then scatter to their mission fields. This is what we call the scattered church. The scattered church. The scattered church is Christ followers doing ministry outside of the church's building. They're actively engaging in the mission field through their work, through their families, through extracurricular activities, and being immersed in their communities. Every waking moment, the scattered church is rubbing shoulders with people who maybe don't know Jesus, maybe they're far from him, or maybe they just need encouragement. The scattered church is working then whenever that barista encourages a customer when they're having a really bad day, or when a businesswoman is trying to come up with a new approach to their business, specifically with the goal to change the world and make the world a better place through the service they offer. The scattered church is even at work when a stay-at-home dad is responsible for caring for his 3 kids and reading them Bible stories and discipling them and raising them up in the way of Christ. Like, it is so all over the place. The church is so much more than just a building or an event or a group. It is a movement about making Christ's name known. You see, we need the gathered church and the scattered church, because after the scattered church is done at the end of their week, they've ministered, they've worked hard, they're tired, they got to come back as a group, and they got to come back to that team huddle in the gathered church, be encouraged, confess their sins from the week before, worship God, and hear their word, and be encouraged before they're scattered out to their mission field again. You see, we cannot have one without the other. But how does this relate to a call to ministry and finding a job in the gathered church or the scattered church? To put it simply, in the gathered church, ministry is your job. But in the scattered church, your job is your ministry. Let me say that again. In the gathered church, ministry is your job, but in the scattered church, your job is your ministry. As a ministry leader, you may be trying to discern what kind of ministry God is calling you to. Like, is it supposed to be working in the gathered church and making its functions run? Maybe that's preaching, maybe that's discipling, and that's equipping other people to do ministry. Or maybe you're called to the scattered church, specifically in making God's name known and serving people through being a businessman, being a teacher, being a vet, being a baker, you name it. All of those present amazing opportunities to still do God's work. It's just, are you called to serve Monday through Friday and Sundays in the local church or elsewhere? Those are some of the questions that you're probably asking. And maybe if you don't know exactly which one, then I also want to encourage you to sign up for something that we have called Calling Coaching. Calling Coaching. These are 1-hour sessions that you can set up with our team where we get to sit down with you over Zoom, FaceTime, whatever your preferred video conference call method is. And we get to hear your story, ask you some questions, and help give you some guidance about maybe where the Lord is guiding you and leading you to. So if you are interested, make sure you check out the link in the description for how you can set one of those up. So definitely be sure to do that. But regardless of what you choose, okay, the Lord will use you for amazing things no matter where you go. You cannot have one without the other. You have to have both the gathered church and the scattered church. Maybe he'll call you one to a season and then for you to go out in the other. So regardless of what you choose to do, no matter what happens, you will always be a part of the gathered church and the scattered church. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of the Called Collective. If you haven't yet already, make sure you subscribe, hit that notification bell, and give us a thumbs up if you like this video, and we will catch you in the next one. See ya.